This is the Grappling Variety Show, episode 31, Jade Barker. Hello and welcome to the Grappling Variety Show, episode 31. My name is Brett Summers and my guest today is Jade Barker. She is a BJJ brown belt competing out of Vitor Shaolin BJJ. She's a former pro MMA fighter. She's involved in the Vespasian security Jiu Jitsu and she's a Taekwondo 4th degree black belt. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Our first question, as always, for someone who's new to the show, where did it all begin for you?
So for me, I started Taekwondo when I was 5. Basically, my mum took me to dancing for like one session, and I think I absolutely despised it. So I said to my dad that I basically wanted to be a Power Ranger, and he was like, "I can take you somewhere where you can become one." So he took me to the local Taekwondo school. When I actually first done it, I actually really didn't like it. I was like, I think I was just like I was shy. I remember like crying, and the instructor sort of like had to take me in, like holding my hand. And then after about sort of like 3 or 4 sessions, I think that was when I really started to really enjoy it. But yeah, so I done that from when I was 5 to 17. And then I just wanted a little bit more from there, to be honest. It just got to a point where I think I started to outgrow Taekwondo. By that point, it already started.
Were you competing at that point as well, or was it just the classes? And
Yeah, so I managed to. So I was like, I got up through the ranks relatively quickly. I really sort of flourished in Taekwondo. Was like was an instructor in it. I started to work towards my sort of like certified instructor as well. And then yeah, it was like always competing regularly, and everything like that. It was always like doing really well at it as well, in terms of like gold medals and all that sort of thing. Um, but it just got to the point where I had to watch a little bit of MMA, and you just sort of realise like I think I want a little bit more now. So I sort of expressed a little bit of interest in maybe sort of kickboxing or boxing, to sort of get into MMA. But then thankfully I found a school relatively close that did MMA, so I was able to transfer then from there. So I left my Taekwondo club to go to this little MMA gym. And at the time, I didn't realise, but so I was only 17. The fella wasn't insured, so he was sort of teaching it a little bit, sort of on the sly. Which so then obviously that had to stop, and that led me into the nearest jiu-jitsu school. So I sort of couldn't get to the sort of next because I wasn't driving or anything. I was only young, so the nearest MMA school was a little bit too far for me to get to. So the next best thing was jiu-jitsu. So I joined the jiu-jitsu school with Colin Howes at Vitor Shaolin BJJ, and that's where I've been since.
how did you find that then? For someone who's been sort of predominantly, I guess, in striking combats, in striking martial arts from like a very young age to then moving across now, you're going to try jiu-jitsu out. What sort of changes sort of did you notice? What kind of differences did you come across walking in? Because it must be quite, you're just regular.
Very different. So yeah, what I was sort of quite fortunate in the sense that because I'd already started watching MMA, had like a so much more of an understanding of like what I was getting into. The only difference was I didn't realize like how like hard the ground game would actually be. So I remember like watching the Ultimate Fighter and things like that, and seeing these like relatively small guys and thinking like, oh, my Taekwondo would beat these guys. And then I went into the jiu-jitsu class with Colin, and there was a fella there. He's a black belt now, and he was like this small guy. I think he was either a white belt or a blue belt at the time, and like he was really small. And I remember thinking like, oh, I'll beat this guy. Like I like have seen a bit of grappling, and he just wiped the floor with me. And then I sort of realized very quickly like it's just a very different sport, and it was almost like in a way, it was quite nice for me. So I'd gone from Taekwondo where I was like excelling in it and always sort of like seen as this like top person in the class, highest belt in the class and all this sort of thing. So then going back and being like a real novice at something new. And it was almost like a bit of a breath of fresh air in a way because I could almost take that step back and really start to learn again and not have any expectations on myself, not have any sort of worries about how terrible I looked or how terrible I did. It was almost like a nice, like, sort of step back and be a beginner again at something, albeit very embarrassing. But
That's a really good attitude to have because, I mean, we've probably all seen it through the years where some people don't leave their ego at the door and they just come in because they're good at one thing, they're good at everything, and it doesn't. It sounds like quite humbling that you come in and you just sort of, it's a blank canvas. Let's see what it does. So that's good. What sort of things started as you were doing that? What sort of things jumped out to you at the start? Were there certain techniques or certain styles or bits that you liked?
um, I think like this sounds like really cheesy, but like I sort of feel like I was born to do martial arts. So sort of going then into sort of like doing it, I was noticing like, don't get me wrong, it took me like a good few weeks to sort of start to really grasp like what was sort of going on. But like everything started coming like fairly naturally, and there's still like a lot of things that I learned from like my first sort of few months that still stick with me now. So I've been like quite fortunate that like everything like has come very sort of natural when it comes to martial arts in general. And yeah, I'd say pretty much if anything, it's probably the flashy sort of stuff that has sort of stuck with me a lot more. But yeah, for me they have really worked, and I think that's sort of what's made my style exciting like today.
So if someone was listening to this now and they've been and ahhing about jiu-jitsu or any martial arts that would take that first step, like you say, coming from the top of something going into something new, what kind of words of advice would you give to either like a complete newbie or even someone who's just looking to add to their tool belt and try something different?
Um, I sort of have always, I've never wanted to get to that point where I've looked back on my life and think I haven't done anything. And I think martial arts, like any kind of sport, like it's just such a good outlet. Like it's enjoyable in a way to suck at something because then you can really sink your teeth into it and really think like, okay, how can I better myself? How can I, you're not sat in front of the telly, you're not wasting your life away. You're actually out there and you're sort of putting yourself there, out there to learn and just better yourself. And that's sort of how I see every session. It's almost just a chance to just sort of like just get better. I think that's just a really exciting prospect, to be honest. Whether you're sort of brand new at it, whether you've just sort of like you're transitioning from one sport to another. Like I said, any sport is sort of, I think it's a really good sort of testing ground for yourself. But martial arts in particular, I don't know, there's just something about it that I just think, in terms of you as an individual, it just helps you grow so much, life wise as well. So, can't recommend it enough.
Um, Okay, then so you've turned your attention now to jiu-jitsu. So is Taekwondo totally finished with now, or are you doing a bit of both still, or is it just jiu-jitsu now?
Yeah, I was sort of like still sort of teaching the odd session here and there, but like my attention had well and truly gone. I think it had got to the point where I was just doing all my training sessions with Vitor Shaolin BJJ, and yeah, just sort of going back and doing the odd coaching, and then I sort of made that conscious decision that yeah, I'm fully done with it now. And to be honest, I never look back.
Good to hear. When was the bit then? When was that moment in jiu-jitsu? So you've gone as a white belt, you're learning all these things. I'm taking you're moving up. Well, you're a brown belt now, so over time you've moved up the ranks. when was that moment when you were like, yeah, I've made the right decision? I've, you know, you've not looked back, but there might have been moments you're thinking, well, actually, I quite liked it, and I could just come and be the best one still.
I don't know. I think like for me, I think it was almost like Taekwondo wasn't cool anymore.
Mm,
So obviously I was there like a lot longer than I probably sort of like even possibly could have been sort of thing. So I started watching MMA when I was about 14, 15.
yeah.
So I'd already like lost interest in it probably a good while back before I actually sort of fully finished it. And I just really sort of realized it just wasn't where it was at for me anymore. And don't get me wrong, like when I've like been teaching and stuff, like in the future, like I was teaching junior kickboxing for a long, long time, and it was always sort of Taekwondo kicks that I sort of did implement, and I'm very like grateful for it, very thankful for it. It had its place at the time. I used a lot of those sort of skills when it comes to MMA, so I was like very fortunate to sort of add what I had learned in Taekwondo into MMA and just like adapt it. But yeah, I think it was just like it just wasn't cool enough for me anymore.
No, I totally get that. And so when then, so you, as I say, you're in jiu-jitsu now. You're doing that. When does that point come where you're thinking, okay, I think I know enough of this to maybe have a look at this MMA stuff now?
So the plan, obviously, when I finished Taekwondo, was to always go into MMA, and then obviously because that fella, like I said, didn't have the insurance, I sort of like fell into jiu-jitsu in a way, which wasn't like a bad thing. It was another aspect of it, but I initially started jiu-jitsu with the intention of still being able to do MMA from there. So when I got to blue belt, I a school had opened up just nearby to where we were training anyway, and my coach become the head coach there. So we just all moved over with him, and we were just all training there under that gym. And under that gym, we done like MMA, we done kickboxing, boxing, wrestling. So it did the whole lot. So that meant I just had to cross train. So I was doing bit of jiu-jitsu still, and then obviously doing bit of kickboxing and stuff during the day, and then MMA as well. Because I was doing a lot of kickboxing in the day, and at this time, female MMA wasn't really that sort of big. Like the pool wasn't that big at all. I think it was just like maybe Rosie Sexton and a very few, like a few others. But no, I was just starting out, so I sort of, didn't sort of get a look in really at that point. It was very early on, and the kickboxing instructor said to me, like, we have a potential kickboxing fight for you. It's going to be like semi-pro. Like, would you be interested in doing it? And I actually thought to myself, I was like, I may not ever get this MMA opportunity just because the pond was so small. And I thought, if this is my only opportunity, I'm going to take kickboxing. So I took this semi-pro kickboxing fight. It was on a really good show, so it was on Shopping which is like one of the biggest in the south. So I did that. I won that, and was like, brilliant. Got at least I've done it. At least I've ticked
Yeah.
fighting in a cage off sort of thing. But then thankfully, the pool started opening up a little bit more. There was a few females sort of filtering through as well. And I did get the chance to fight MMA from the following year onwards. So it was almost like a really nice transition. I sort of was doing my jiu-jitsu, moved into sort of MMA, kickboxing, had this kickboxing fight, which I always think was like a nice little warm up to then follow on properly with MMA.
What was it like then? So, you've had a kickboxing fight now in front of a crowd. And but again, that is going back to your roots a little bit. But the
Mhm.
actual when the MMA's coming along now, what's it like getting prepared for that comparing to how you trained for, say, kickboxing or your other or your grappling or jiu-jitsu tournaments up to that point? 'Cause when
Um,
did you first get that phone call going, oh, we've got a fight for you? You know, when did it become real?
so my first fight was actually against Fionn Davies in MMA, and obviously, like, yeah, a lot of people don't even know that she ever sort of fought MMA. So yeah, so we knew at the time she was like a judo, jiu-jitsu girl. My friend had actually trained with her. So we were working on quite a lot of things for that. my grappling, I was still just a blue belt, so it was nowhere near her level. So we was going to try and strike, and defend against the takedown and stuff like that. So, but that was the first time I've really sort of had I had like a fight camp for the kickboxing fight, and obviously always trained hard when it comes to the to jiu-jitsu and stuff. But this was the first time I was going to have to really start cutting weight, doing all those bits. I don't think I had a salt bath or anything, but it was like almost like the whole shebang, dieting, like I said, proper camp, shark tanks, the lot. So to be honest, I loved it. I really did love all that sort of lifestyle, I guess, at the time.
And how did that translate? Because it's like the famous Mike Tyson quote: "Everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face." That walking into the octagon, that gate shutting behind you the first time, people around you, whatever they might be shouting out, whatever. What was that atmosphere like? What was that vibe like when you was stood there face to face, ready to start it?
Do you know what? I absolutely loved it. I like it's really weird for me. I never liked the sort of build up. Always was really nervous. Always really nervous sort of backstage, and everything like that. But the moment the cage door shut, it was almost like I don't have a choice now but to do it. So I quite liked that. And it was in my hometown as well, Portsmouth. So everyone was cheering for me, which is like the best feeling in the world. Like you can never sort of hear you can always hear your coach. You can't really hear sort of anyone in the crowd, but every now and again you can still hear like, "Go on, Jade!" Like, and that's like amazing to hear. But it was very much the fight didn't last very long. I threw like a big overhand like to start. Like that was like the game plan. So I threw this big overhand. I got it on camera. It looks really good. But then she just sort of grabbed me, which we knew she'd do. She like wrestled me to the floor. She got me in something. It was like a crucifix position. I managed to get out, and then she got me in Americana. And I just remember thinking, I've got work on Monday. And I was like, yeah, like it was my first amateur fight. But
Yeah.
what I did feel from it is I was like, I want to do this again. And like that's what I sort of love more than anything. It wasn't like, don't get me wrong, obviously I was upset like I lost. But seeing what like Fion's done now, I'm really proud that like that was my first fight. Like who can say that? Like especially in
Yeah.
MMA, so many people have like grappled against her, but not many people have done MMA against her. So yeah, that was my first experience in fighting, and yeah, probably toughest person I could have gone against.
That then, how long was it then between? 'Cause like you say, the female MMA scene was kind of on the rise, and a bit like you say, there were certain pools around in certain areas. How long was it before your next fight came along? After that, did
Um,
people see it, and was your phone ringing off the
yeah,
hook, or was it?
quite lucky. So I had in between there was like little winter clubs and stuff like that. So I think I had my first fight in MMA fight in the November, and then I think by the April or like March or April, I think I had another one. And this again was still like amateur, but then I went against another girl who had like trained with us a little bit, who like I'd done like interclubs against the month after, and that was my last amateur fight. So I had like three amateur fights in under a year. It's like probably yeah. So I think I fought her in the April. So I done like November, March, April, or June, whenever it was, and then went into pro after that.
For those listening, what were the differences? Because I know in some areas it's changed a little bit now as well. But what was an amateur then compared to a pro? What was involved in the step up, like with rules and
Um, so I remember one of my amateur fights, the lady actually asked if we could wear shin pads, but on the day she actually said, like, can we not? Which, like, that was fine. Like, I'd rather not wear shinnies. So that was like a thing. No elbows. I think it was only knees to the body. I don't know how much of this has changed, to be honest. And obviously the amateur MMA gloves. Um, and obviously like the round time was a bit different. So it's like 3-3. yeah, opposed to like 3 5s. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it. So not massively different.
Not really, but no, nothing really impacted on you on that step up there, not in those sorts of areas.
Nah, it was one of those things that like suddenly I was like, great, I can like do a little bit more. I can use those elbows. And to be honest, like in terms of like my actual style, although it's like quite exciting, I don't really like a short round, even now in jiu-jitsu. Like I do really like the 10-minute rounds. So for me, then having 5 minutes per round just meant that I could settle, meant that I could actually implement like a bit of a game plan and that sort of thing, fill people out and stuff like that, which yeah, I really liked.
And did you notice then in turning pro, what was the step up in competition like? Was it similar people you'd seen on the amateurs, or was there a whole new circuit of people for you to
Um,
get to grips with?
it was and it wasn't. So my first fight was again against a girl that I'd been with against in like interclubs who I'd like trained with as well. Unfortunately, in that fight, I probably shouldn't have fought like looking in hindsight, but I had really bad back. It still gives me like trouble now. This is like back in 2015. Um, but yeah, so I had this pro fight and couldn't even train properly for it. I sort of just had to spend most of it on that silly Airdyne bike. That's pretty much like my camp. So it wasn't like the best of circumstances, but I lost that. But I still again had this motivation. Like then I was like, okay, get this back fixed. So my sorted, got my back sorted, and then was able to really sort of focus on sort of going forward. And I was quite thankful. My coach was like able to get people in from like abroad. So like my next fight was against someone from France, and then I was against like people from London who I hadn't seen before, and stuff like that. So then it was sort of like traveling a little bit more for other opponents elsewhere.
Yeah, that seems to be a bit of the same nowadays from speaking to different people. It's definitely it's a travelling game to get those opponents that you want for the matches because
Mhm.
it's a bit few and far between. Although apparently it is getting better now. I mean, for someone who's was there probably sort of the beginning of it really in sort of the UK at least, and like you say, all these names coming through to seeing it now with the different MMA organisations and all the different grappling tournaments, especially even female grappling tournaments now as well. I mean,
Mhm.
how's that been for you seeing that all develop as time's gone on?
Yeah, it's incredible. Like I said, when I took that kickboxing fight, I only took it because I thought I may not have another opportunity because
That's
the ladies were like very few and far between. There wasn't really much out there for us in general. So to see this sort of now and like to see it growing and then to see sort of like kids coming up through like other like young girls and they're like smashing it. Like I sort of travel a little bit to train and like some of the like 14, 15 year olds that I like go up and like who are in the classes as well and they're savages. And I think like wow, like what a change that like happened. But it's fantastic, like especially because of, like initially with martial arts, it's very like dominate a male dominated sport, especially like when I was like young as well. When I done Taekwondo, I was like the only female in the class, and every now and again you might get the odd like girl that would join, and then she'd drop out, but it was very just not many of us really. So now for it to be so many females, fantastic. I think it's a real nice thing to see. Don't get me wrong. I wish in a way that like I was that a little bit younger, so I could sort of be amongst it a
exactly what
little
you
bit more.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But annoyingly, I'm sort of like on the higher end, like in terms of like being age and all that sort of thing. Especially when you've got these like young guns like coming up. Sounds really like silly. It's not like I'm really that old, but yeah, obviously in terms of the people that are coming up now, these 14, 15 year olds that are just savages, so I could have been that.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's great how it is building up, and as I say, I think the future is definitely bright for it with all the different things coming along. But actually, itself though, then, so you're MMA now. How at this point was it going back to that again? You're still jiu-jitsuing around, you're moving up there. So are you training for MMA and you're still competing in jiu-jitsu at the same time?
Yeah, it
Does
was
it
one of
feel
those
like?
things that I just had to sort of fit it in when I could. So it'd be the sort of thing that like you'd maybe do the odd jiu-jitsu class here and there. I did always want to spend more time on it, but when you've got MMA like bits on, and there was always like I was always making sure that I was in somewhat shape and everything like that. So if I did ever get a call, because at this point as well, where I was coming up through, it was always like a really big possibility that could have someone like Cage Warriors call Invicta, or even like the UFC as well. So there was always like this point where like there was all, especially like for females at this point where there wasn't a massive pool of us. There was still that opportunity that I only had to have one big fight for it to really happen for me. So I was actually at one point I was actually booked for a title fight against Helen Harper, and she'd just been in the Ultimate Fighter. So it was like a big possibility that if I had beaten her, could have ended up really sort of, getting a call from someone
Yeah.
else. So I always had to make sure that I was staying amongst it. And obviously, the problem that I always found was that every time I went back to jiu-jitsu, I almost started to go like rolling like jiu-jitsu. So I almost like had to, it was almost like I just had to put my focus that little bit more into MMA just so I didn't start developing rolling for jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? It was
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
like yeah, trying to sort of just keep it as relevant.
Keep that MMA mindset sort of thing. Were
Yeah.
there any opponents around that time that you were sort of really trying to, well, you just said about the other, but are there any other opponents though that you were trying to sort of get hold of at that point that you think, oh, if I can get this one, or were you just waiting for fights to come in for yourself? I mean,
It was waiting for ones to come in. That one with Helen Harper, unfortunately, it didn't happen. She had to pull out on the day of the fight. So that's for me just sort of like, don't get me wrong, like the fight would have panned out how it panned out, like who knows. But yeah, like at the time it was like I was coming up and I'd had this really good win. And then I was like ready to fight her and I was like, right, when I beat her, I'm going to get this phone call. And obviously, because this it didn't materialize, it just sort of set me back quite a bit. Life got in the way a little bit as well. So then it was sort of like waiting a little bit for then my next fight. And then unfortunately, I lost my next fight. And it was just one of those that then there's just
yeah,
like, there's always the odd obstacle here and there that sort of like gets thrown at you, unfortunately. And when it comes to this sort of thing, that's what then knocks you down that ladder again, sort of thing.
yeah, time. So, what advice would you give then? Because obviously there are people that are now probably in similar positions. I mean, there's like we said, there's probably a lot more options. I mean, one that sticks out to me at the moment is probably Chanel Dyer, who's then gone to the PFL at the moment rather than I think she could have probably took a UFC contract and probably been rushed through, but she's sensible enough to take that time and develop, I think, and I think she's going to be a big name in the future, or bigger name. But what
100%.
sort of advice would you give to, well, any fighters now, female specifically, I guess, because that, well, the options they've got available to them. But they're sat there now, they're waiting for that phone, or they're trying to make their own fight. We've seen fighters get rushed through or trying to rush up the ladder. What would you say to them?
More than anything, like what I sort of think, like with my MMA career, is almost like at times I wish I was a little bit smarter with it. So, for example, like when I did injure my back, like I should have just pulled out. Little things like that where it has sort of like knocked me back a little bit and stuff like that. There was a time that I took a fight which I think I'd overtrained dramatically, and again, it just been in this position where I didn't take my own advice and sort of like, listen to everyone else around me. And I probably should have thought for myself a little bit. Um, and if you want longevity in this sport, like you do have to be smart. And, just sort of taking fights for the sake of taking fights isn't always the best way. Um, so yeah, that's probably my best advice in terms of MMA, definitely.
Okay, so that's it. The jiu-jitsu now, then. So you're at brown belt now, and are you still competing regularly now?
Yeah, so I try and get more super fights in than anything. So had my last MMA fight back in 2021. And then I was by this point I was 30. So I'd got to the point where I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'd really come to this epiphany where I was like, I don't think it's for me anymore. Um, which took me a little while to sort of like um, just come to terms with, I guess. And then someone just said to me, they were like, why don't you just go back to jiu-jitsu like properly and try and just be the best you can at jiu-jitsu and like try and get your black belt and everything like that. And I was like, yeah. So I like went to like my first Polaris match show and like loved it and was like, yeah, this is the route I want to go down. So just started training relentlessly and that treated treated it like it was like backfiring again, which I still do now. So still make sure that I'm in relatively good shape, still make sure that I'm eating well and everything like that, and always training hard too. The difference is that the everything that surrounds jujitsu, I feel I get more enjoyment from it. So like the general scene, the training, bit more relaxed attitude, everything I just prefer, and that's kept me in it, like constantly enjoying it. You know, it's very even when I know I should have a week off, I'm like, no, I can't help it, I have to go. Whereas MMA very much got like a chore. So it was really nice to sort of have that mindset where I went back into jiu-jitsu with this like real sort of focused mindset, which to be fair, I haven't really lost. And yeah, and now just sort of putting all my efforts into these super fights that come up. Um, I obviously do competitions as well. The only difference is there's that I'm sort of finding that you're always sort of against the same people. So and I quite like the super fights too. I like the atmosphere. I like it that it is all feels like a bit like a fight, feels like a proper event again, stuff like that. And I can really sort of like put everything into it. Not that I wouldn't with competition. I just think I like the vibe a lot more for the super fights.
Definitely the same with all these different grappling competitions and slightly different grappling rule sets, whatever that's coming out now. I think, yeah, it's just a chance. There's a lot more chance to, well, hopefully, well, with UFC chucking money into jiu-jitsu as well now with the recent thing as well, you know, I'm hoping in the next sort of 10 years you're going to see that be just as much of a career as an MMA fighter is, and you know,
Exactly.
probably just be a bit more longevity in that as well because
Yeah.
not getting
Fingers
smashed in the
crossed.
head all the time. But one thing I was just going to say with the MMA and I guess in the jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general, you talked a little bit about the training and the sort of the weight cutting thing. I mean, what's your views on that? Because we're seeing all sorts of opinions on it, and it seems to be that you know we're getting people now. I mean, there was a fight the other week that got called off literally as they're about to walk through the door because I think the poor girl ill backstage or whatever it was, and to play. And I think the pressures people are under now. You know, do you think is it something of the past now, or is it something that dealt with in
Um,
a different way, maybe?
I wouldn't like to do it again. Like, um, I didn't ever even cut that much because I just really didn't like it. So I went about it the complete opposite way to everyone else, and just I dieted down to like a certain point, trained really hard, and then like really like nutrition wise, I probably had no nutrition whatsoever when I was like fighting because I was just like probably like starving myself to an extent, like just to get down to food. But I ended up fighting at 52. That was the way I was ended up at. So I was probably never even performing at my maximum because I was just like doing everything to not have these saunas and salt baths. I remember I had one salt bath and it was horrible. I just remember like almost seeing my heart coming out my chest and everything, and I was like, I do not want to do this. So that was why I ended up like doing this like dramatic, like starving myself sort of situation to get down to like 52, which was dreadful in itself. And like I said, I was probably never ever fighting at my capacity. And then it made it really hard for me to then put on the weight once I'd weighed in as well. Because yeah, my body was just probably in just a right old state. Um, so I think the extremes that people go to is is quite, extreme, and it's a shame that it's still like it. I don't know how you'd sort it. I don't know if maybe like one FC have the right idea. I'm not entirely sure. You do see it sometimes, I think, now in jiu-jitsu, and but it's not for me. I sort of will do everything I can to avoid that sort of situation again. It's like I don't think it's good for you, like mental health or physical health.
What do you think of there's been a big movement in sort of this year, especially with female jiu-jitsu, of getting like more female weight categories put in because of all the like the sort of jumps and when it gets to ultra heavy, it's like anything above that, and I think there's like a £10 difference in the category before that, and putting sort of intermittent weight categories in to make it like sort of a fairer competition. Really, what do you think about
Yeah,
things like that?
I think same as like the fellas as well. Like you always get those like in between sort of weights, like and
Yeah.
that's what I'm at the moment. I'm almost a little bit too heavy for 55, but I'm a little bit too small for under 60. I naturally compete under 60, but like where I sit is just that little bit too lighter, and you've still got some girls that are still cutting down to under 60. So I'm sort of like back in this situation again where I'm just a little bit like like just don't really know where I sort of fit. So if we did have more categories, it'd be great. And obviously the thing is as well is like again more opportunities, which would be perfect. And yeah, would stop this sort of like I said, I think in terms of like mental health as well. I think it really does sort of like ruin you. I've been sort of speaking to a nutritionist quite recently about it, and just sort of said, like I always am trying to be under 60, but naturally now because of my age, I'm not going to be under 55. Like I'm just finding it really, really hard. I'm just finding that I'm naturally at like say 58, 59, but what can I basically do? Like, and so it's sort of just trying to really find this happy medium, trying to find what suits you, trying to find where you're actually like at performing as well. And I feel like that's a really big thing, performance and obviously happiness as well.
Fair enough. So, what with you and your jiu-jitsu and your grappling now, then? How you? When did the sort of coaching side come into it for you? 'Cause I know you do a lot of that sort of personal training and things like that as well. But when did that, along the journey, think actually coaching might be something for me?
Yeah, so I was coaching back when I was doing Taekwondo, and then when the gym opened up that we all go to now, there's an opportunity to coach kids kickboxing. So I've always coached the kids kickboxing at the gym, taught a little bit of jiu-jitsu as well. I done that from when I think it was like 2012 to till quite recently. I think I stopped doing it in 2023, just because like work life was just really getting on top of me. Plus trying to train as well, trying to fit that in was really getting difficult. I've got a good job. Um, so sort of trying to manage coaching on top of that was just becoming really difficult. So I made this conscious decision to stop doing stop coaching the kids kickboxing. Um, and then relatively recently, I'm still doing an odd one-to-one here and there when I had actually
Yeah.
like had time. But then relatively recently, I was approached by the security team in Portsmouth, so Vespasian Security, to do a seminar for them. So I done a seminar in grappling for them, and they all really enjoyed it. And then I was approached by them again to do striking and do that sort of side of things. And then one of the guys there said to me, he was like, "I want us to start a jiu-jitsu team. Can you be our head coach?" And it was an absolute no-brainer. I spoke to my instructor and just like got his like blessing, I guess. Said like, "Do you mind me doing this?" And yeah, and it's so now I coach the Vespasian Security Jiu-Jitsu.
What's that
And
like coaching? So, what's that like coaching? I just imagine like a bunch of sort of security guys who've probably all done different things and of all sort of states and so I'm just picturing a sort of misfit. It could be a sitcom maybe, but there's all different shapes and sizes guys who've done different things and that, and then you're trying to tell them to do something. What's that like for you?
that's us. So that yeah, that is literally us. So yeah, really. So I've just come back from there now, but
Okay.
it's the highlight of my week, easy. And yeah, it's just these big like units, and like I love it. Like we just have such like good banter and everything like that, and we always like make like jokes, how small I am compared to them, and I'll like still beat them up and stuff like that. And now they've got me working for them, so now I'm like working for them as well, doing some cool
Okay.
bits with like security. So like again, like something that I never thought I'd sort of like fall into, but yeah, because I'm mostly like. I love spending time with them. I love like they've really sort of like immersed themselves in it. And bearing in mind, like so many of them have never done this before, and like took them up to their first competition. They like got gold, silvers, all that sort of thing. It was fantastic. So yeah, it's a pleasure to sort of spend time with them every week. Yeah, like something I'm really, really proud of, to be honest.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So, what was I going to say now? Yeah. So, where then do you think you've got this team now? You've got your other bits still going on. Where do you think this coaching sort of thing's going to lead? Is it something now you're looking to more go into the coaching, or is competing still going to be a driving force?
To be honest, I just love the sport full stop, and I don't think I'll ever sort of come away from it. I'll compete as long as I can, and I'll also coach as long as I can as well. Initially, it wasn't on my mind to coach the security team. It's just that I got approached and could make it work. There are a few things that I've sort of got in the pipeline, like in terms of plans, and in terms of coaching, which I think will really be something really exciting to have down south. And that's something I'm currently working on. So the project's called Southsea Grapple. So so we've got Portsmouth, like obviously I live in Portsmouth, and then where the sea is, that's Southsea. So yes, I've got a few plans for Southsea Grapple going forward,
Excellent.
and hopefully we'll be able to include like the security team in that as well. But yeah, I think like in general, jiu-jitsu I find is very exciting. I find the whole prospect of it very exciting. I find the future exciting. So in term, it's sort of like the possibilities are endless with it, really.
No, definitely, definitely. I mean, what about yourself, sort of on the personal note? Have you got any other? Is there anything else on your bucket list now, as a competitor, as a martial artist, that I still want to try and do that. I still want to try and achieve that, or whatever, or try that.
Yeah,
What's like?
definitely.
What challenges have you got? Because you seem like someone that will keep trying to challenge yourself all the time.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed. um, but like last year, I was very much like I want to get on. I was like I want to get on Polaris again. I want to do this. I want to do that. This year has been very much I want to get better at competing. So something like I have noticed about myself, even when I was doing MMA, I've never been able to sort of really reach my full potential when it's actually come to a match. Actually, on the day, I had um, a match on Endured back in March, and I felt like I was starting to get there. I was like, yes, this is what I'm more after, this type of performance. So my goal currently is to compete better. So in terms of like getting on the show again, obviously, there's one that's going on like locally. There's ones that I'm trying to sort of get on a little bit further north. But in terms of actually my goals for competing, like I said, it's to compete better. And then what I'd really like is to be able to get back on Polaris and actually get a win on Polaris next time. Because I've had two good, like one good outing, one not so good outing. But if I can actually get on there again and actually get a good win, then I'll be happy. And then obviously, more than anything, I really like my black belt. We'll see.
Keep going, keep going. Okay, no, that's brilliant. So, if anyone is listening to this and they are liking the sort of things you're doing, like the clubs and sort of style of training, what's the best way for someone to get hold of you?
So just on my Instagram would be best. So Jade_Barker BJJ. We've got our security team, Jitsu as well. So anyone's obviously more than welcome to join us on that. which is Vespasian Security BJJ. And then obviously in terms of our little project that's hopefully going to mount into more, that's Southsea_Grapple. But more than anything, what I say to anyone in terms of their jiu-jitsu journey and everything like that is just to enjoy it. The moment it's not enjoyable, like, you sort of have to look at, why you're still doing it and everything like that. But look at it for enjoyment, and I think it will keep you in the game a long time.
Oh no, that's brilliant. That's a very wise way there. Thank you very much for joining us this week, Dave. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, thank you for taking the time out. As I say, you came straight back from training to do this. So
Yeah,
yeah, we really do appreciate it.
no, honestly, thanks for having me. It means a lot.
Is there anything else as well you would like to sort of share with our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, just want to give a shout out to my sponsors, Women That Fight. They're doing really good things for female MMA and jiu-jitsu. Their kit's really good as well. But in terms of what they're actually doing for the community, it's really exciting, and really, really good. Um, Really lovely to see, to be honest. Such a good community of people. So please go ahead and follow them. And also Grappler's Soap, Point Joppers, and my strength coach, Adam Wills.
I will get the links in the show notes as well for those guys as well.
Thank you.
So if you follow the show notes, everyone, you'll be able to see them. But again, yeah, thank you for taking the time tonight to speak to us, and wish you all the best of all your plans and everything for the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Jade for taking time to join us this week. As we look ahead to next week, you can check out everything we're doing at the grappleofyoureye.com. You see all our previous podcasts and everything they're up to. Also, you can follow us on our social media on Instagram, Facebook, and all the others to see what's going on. And if you're someone who likes to listen to our show, you can listen on things like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all different podcast apps that are out there. Or if you're someone who prefers to watch, you can check us out on YouTube with reels dropping through the week and a new episode dropping every Thursday, 7 a.m. UK time. So thanks for joining us this week. I've been your host, Brett Summers, and we'll be back next week with a new guest. In the meantime, stay safe and stay on the mats.
I tend to tell people, from an amateur wrestler to a professional wrestler to a cage fighter to being the alpha male of senior citizens now.
I would definitely recommend BJJ. I say quite frequently, I think it's really helped Clay. It's given him some structure, it's given him discipline, and also, but probably most important thing, it's given him a routine. I mean, with the training, he knows where we're going to be, what day. He goes into the same gym or the same gyms now, because he trains at different gyms, and yeah, it's helped him. It's built relationships with his peers. He's got great friends. He's got some great role models in the gyms that he trains at, with not only the coaches but all the adults that are there. And it's just a great environment. It took me by surprise. It wasn't what I expected when we first walked into a gym.
And it's interesting in that there are a number of tournaments that are promised and organized with the Future Federation. And in one of them, there's a clause there will be tournaments with strikes involved, but they will be held under different regulations. And I saw that, and I completely missed that the first time I read that document, right? And I'm going, holy cow. I think that our forefathers, our founding fathers, they had the wisdom to see that a competition was going to drift away from the reality of combat, and that a rule set with strike was necessary in order to maintain that foot in reality.
When I qualified for the Olympic Games and being the first female in wrestling for New Zealand, I think that really took the cake. I think that was the best feeling ever, and I think about it often still, and it still makes me feel really good.